And as we were praying, we felt so strong about calling Brother Glenn Massey. And so we are honored and thrilled for him to be with us on this night at October 7th. And we know that it is the will of God. So we're so thankful. And let's see, I hope that I got everything on that. If we have no other discussions on announcements, I would love to introduce to you our speaker for tonight, Brother Glenn Massey, who just recently lost his darling wife, Madonna. Probably most of you that's on here know who I'm talking about. She was a world-class Christian, absolutely amazing, and she was one of my close friends. But the thing about Madonna is that everybody thought they were her closest friend because she was just that way. And we are so honored and so thrilled tonight to have you, Glenn Massey, with us. So, just give us a quick background on what you were talking about, how quickly all this happened, Glenn.
First of all, Nan, I want to say thanks for having me. And I am a substitute for Vesta Main. It appears the only thing her and I have in common really is that we both live in Alexandria, Louisiana. Nonetheless, what a great lady. And I spent some time with her today, as a matter of fact, at her funeral. Story on my wife, Madonna. Some of you may know her as Madonna McFall. My last name is Massey, as has already been said. So Madonna Massey. Um, I'll give you just a rundown. My wife was singing at a church, and someone gave her a word from the Lord that she was sick, needed to go to the doctor. She did, in fact, go to the doctor a couple of weeks after that. That was January of this year. Blood work, CAT scan, urinalysis, 3 sets of blood work, as a matter of fact. January, March, and April or May was the third one. Not a single indicator of anything awry. Her primary symptoms were fatigue and some lower back pain centering around her hips. And she was born with scoliosis, so the lower back pain was fairly explainable. The fatigue, she kept a busy schedule, was not so far off base. But based on that word from the Lord, we started checking it all out. Nothing showed up anywhere at all. She got in some severe pain one night after a family cookout and sleepover at our house. Our kids, her brother, my grandson were all at the house. She drove herself to the hospital at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning. None of us knew it. And came back. She was having some problems, told that she probably had a severe UTI. Saturday, the pain increased. Sunday night, a friend came to the house to take her to the ER because the pain was intense. Around 2 a.m. in the morning on that Monday morning, or late that Sunday night, however you view it, the doctor came in the room and said, "I'm not an oncologist. This is not an oncology hospital, but I know a metastatic tumor when I see it." And so I asked him, "What would you do, doctor?" And he said, "I would take her to the oncology hospital. I would have you an appointment made. I'm going to transport her via ambulance." And so that's how it went down. From the day of diagnosis to the day of death was only 22 days. I tell people that I'm surprised that she passed. And I know people watching might say, but Glenn, she had stage 4 metastatic cancer. Why were you surprised? Here's the reason. Post-diagnosis, I asked her, "Madonna, how are you? How are you taking it?" And she said, "Glenn, I'm not afraid of cancer. God's got us. We are going to get a miracle." She said it so emphatically, and she never wavered nor never blinked in the following 21 days. As a result, all of us were so convinced God was going to heal her that when she passed, it was a literal surprise to us all. So,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know they just put the port in.
mhm.
Uh, I don't know. Did she have one chemo?
She had one round of chemo on that on a Friday. She passed on a Tuesday. They told us 3 days in a row going to be terribly rough. Fourth day, you're going to see a huge turn toward the better, and hopefully the cancer tumor will have shrunk. As they predicted, days 1, 2, and 3 were horrible. Day 4, the day she passed, I came in the room. She had 2 attendants, both of her aunts were there to take care of her. She'd been talking in a low, low whisper for 2 weeks straight. I came in the room on that 4th day post chemo, the day she passed, and she said to me, "Hey, baby," perfectly normal voice. Her color had been gray. It was now perfect. Her skin tone was excellent. And I said, "Babe, your skin tone great. Your voice is back. Wow, we've turned the corner." And that was at 8:30. At 10:30, I came back home from work, and they gave her a sponge bath in the bed and turned her over to her side. And I asked her uh, quite loudly, "Do you love me?" Mainly to see if she would open her eyes and get some reaction. And she opened her eyes and she said, "With everything inside me." And her eyes rolled back in her head. I slapped her on the forehead. "Focus, Madonna," I said. She opened her eyes one more time, smiled real big, breathed her last breath. And now that was traumatic. It was in our bed at our home. It was traumatic in one way, in our bed at our home, yes. It was a blessing another way. We weren't in a hospital room surrounded by machines, and I was able to speak to her just a little bit before she passed. So those things were blessings, and beyond that, um, the journey to grief has been a surprising one for sure.
How old was she?
Madonna was 53. 53. We have 2 children, a 23-year-old daughter, a 26-year-old son, 5-year-old grandson.
That was the light of her
Uh,
life.
yes, yes.
What's his name? What's his name, Glenn?
His name is Weston Blue. Weston was named, he is the second child that my mother, who we idolized, had named after her. The first child was my son, and his name is Easton Blue. He then named his boy Weston Blue. And so Weston,
Oh my
the light of
gosh.
our life, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
How's he doing? How is he doing with this, Glenn?
You know, it's amazing to me how children process what they process. I'll just give you the little backstory on how we dealt with him and told him about it, and maybe some of the symptoms now that tells me he's dealing with grief. On the way here, my son and daughter were both working, so they drove in when my wife passed, and so on the way they told Weston that uh, Dolly, that was her grandma name, Dolly, and that Dolly was taking a nap with Jesus, and that
Oh,
and that
oh,
she would not be present at the house. And as a matter of fact, they went a little further and said, when you go to Pop and Dolly's from now on, it'll only be Pop because Dolly's taking a nap with Jesus. Uh, I thought it was a good way to explain it to him. It was the best thing we could come up with at the moment. Him being 5, and he showed up, and fortunately there were some kids there, and he went to some children's house for a while until we got the house settled down and organized a little bit, and they came, got her body, brought her to the funeral home. He came back later and they brought him to me. I was sitting in the sunroom and he said to me, Pop, from now on, when I come to your house, will it just be you? And I said, yes, baby, it just be me. Dolly's taking a nap with Jesus.
Oh,
When I said that, the pain that washed over his face is
oh, oh,
difficult to describe. His face fell
oh,
and his features turned almost gray. And he buried his head in my arm. He didn't cry. He just stayed still for a long time, 5 minutes or so. That seemed like an hour, but probably 3 to 5 minutes. Um, so that was the reaction there. People asked, did you let him see her in the casket? Yeah, we thought it'd be best to do that. Some people, there are different schools of thought on that. We thought it would be good because she looked excellent in the casket. And so we let him see her. Now you say, how's he reacting now? Two things I'll just tell you. You typically, wherever I am, he is almost in my back pocket. Um, since she's passed, I go see him one day a week. They live an hour and 45 minutes south of here. And I go see him one day a week on Thursdays. And he runs up to me like always, embraces me like always, hugs me like always. Pop, I'm so glad to see you. The same child for a minute, but he is not nearly as attached to me as he was. Almost standoffish, a little bit shy uh, around me. Uh,
why do you think that is, Glenn?
I think that is I think it's his reaction to grief. And
Okay.
here's what I think. I think for him, Pop and Dolly, me and Madonna, had been a package deal. Uh,
Right.
he rarely saw one of us without the other.
Right.
Most of the time he saw us, he was coming to our house to stay for several days in a row. So I think every time he sees me, he is freshly reminding that Dolly is no longer there. And I think he's not sure. I almost think he feels like, and it's difficult to read into a child's behavior, but I think sometimes he feels like something is amiss and he don't know what to do about it. Now, again, he sleeps with me when I stay with him, and so we have good conversations. I usually mention Dolly. I usually talk to her. Two little things that just a little note of sadness, but it shows you how children's minds work. I was getting in bed with him the other night when we were staying at his house, and he said, "Pop, you know what Dolly used to call me?" And I said, "What?" And he said, Dolly used to say that was her favorite snuggle bug.
Oh,
And I said, yeah, Bub, you were Dolly's favorite snuggle bug. Another little story, a little sad, but it just shows you how children's minds work a little. The other day, I FaceTimed him. Chapel, my daughter, was behind me, but behind my head. She had her mom's sunglasses on. And so she looked around my head, and Weston said, his eyes got bright and his face lit up, and he said, are you Dolly?
oh,
And she said, she took the glasses off immediately. No, baby, I'm Chap. And he said, oh. And it was like when he saw it, it was like, please be real. Please be true.
yeah.
Because in his mind, it's about time to wake up from a nap. You know,
Yeah.
well,
Yes.
he was napping with Jesus. So that's kind of how it affected him. Uh, and and how it affects us both.
What about the kids? They're both your kids are married.
Both my kids are male female grief patterns. I'm coming to learn from research and reading and from just living it out plainly are different. And I'll describe my children and how they're doing and describe their settings. So maybe if you're watching this, you can tag into one of the scenarios that might fit what's going on in your world or your children's world. My son's 26 years old. He lives an hour and 45 minutes south of here in a town called Lake Charles, Louisiana. Um, because his mom was not in his normal everyday, aside from a FaceTime, a text, or a phone call. He was able to leave the funeral, go back home, and it felt like for him that his routine was normal. Besides the seeing the pictures, the videos, missing the phone calls, largely his routine was unharmed and normal. As a result, it's allowed him to process the grief in a different frame of mind. Uh, one, males have a ability, as all of you counselor types know, to compartmentalize just by nature most of the time. But because his routine didn't include her, he's able to process grief in a different way. Almost his grief comes in bite-sized pieces. I would like to say maybe a moment in a day when he realizes, mom often texts me at this time, or he sees something I'd like to text mom. That his grief is not continual, just bite-sized, uh,
Right.
one bite at a time. Um, and I think that's also kind of a male pattern of dealing with grief in some ways. Okay, let's contrast that with my daughter, Chapel, who lives here in Alexandria, Pineville. Um, Chapel was at our house 4 to 6 nights a week. Uh, on her way home from work, the road leads past the road to turn into our neighborhood. She often, most often in the evenings, came by and drank coffee with her mother. Her and her mother were best friends. They did almost everything together if we were in town. Chapel and Madonna were together. As a result, the grief that Chapel's dealing with is so much more intense because it has totally disrupted her normal pattern of life. Now, when I say her grief is more intense, I don't mean to minimize my son's grief at all. But I would like to say that the pattern of her life so tightly woven with her mother, there's almost no moment in the day that she doesn't realize her mother is not present. And so it's been a grueling journey for her. Her progress forward has been much slower in terms of what you can see on the outside. Um, and also,
Okay, I'm not sure what has happened. Jason, are you there?
Coming back in.
Yeah, I don't know what we've lost him. Hopefully
He's,
he'll
he's coming back in.
okay. Great. Thank you so much. Everybody just hang on. He's got some more that I know that he wants to say and needs to say.
I apologize. I had to unmute, guys. I'm sorry. Um, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, 10-4. Uh, at the end of the day, I think if the person is not involved in your everyday, it is sometimes easier to deal with in terms of controlling the emotional side of it. My daughter has a much more difficult time because her whole routine has been altered. And
Well, I know that, I actually had Chap out the first time she spoke at
yes,
a women's meeting, right?
that's right.
And I just remember that she really looked to Madonna, Mom. I'm speaking for the very first time, but Madonna was such, oh my goodness, she was like the biggest cheerleader, the biggest supporter of Chap, and she was just 13
Right.
when she came to speak. So yeah, it's got to be tough. Like Chap doesn't have the she doesn't have her kids yet. So many things,
Yeah.
that it's tough.
Well, also, I think sometimes personalities affect grief big time. Um, my son he's happy-go-lucky. He never has a bad day. He's cheerful most moments. Um, my daughter, on the other hand, has always been a very sensitive individual. From the time she was a child, she was very, very sensitive. Uh, Now, as it came to the spirit realm, that was her great gift. Uh,
Yes.
Chapel can tap into the supernatural. God speaks to her. She
Yeah.
sees things. She has a great gift of discernment.
Yes, she does.
Supernatural, she flows in that so easily. However, that sensitivity, when it comes to grief, becomes her enemy.
Yeah.
And because she feels everything and
Yes.
and is not able to disconnect from feelings very often about it. I also think it's the people who don't get talked about sometime in these grief conversations, or are the spouses of the children. In my case, I think sometimes it's a tightrope for my son-in-law to walk because he's trying to figure out, how can I help? What can I do? And sometimes it's difficult for him to do anything right. That's just the fact of the matter.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and then my son, uh, his wife Maddie, um, you know, uh, he don't want her to be his mother. Stop mothering me. I don't need you to mother me right now. And so it's difficult for the spouse in those situations to really know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
There's not really a one size fits all for these situations
oh yeah, yeah,
because every journey in grief is its own character.
right, right, right. Um, you know, I think personality type, uh, how much access you had to the person that you're grieving, i.e., were they in your life all the time or not? Circumstances of your life. Is your life relatively healthy while you're grieving, or are you in a high stress environment? Is there some other chaos going on in your life? Do you face an undue amount of pressure from financial pressure? Uh, all these factors weigh in big on on grief. Now, we know that one of my wife's favorite phrases was, lean into the pain, feel it, don't live there, feel it, move on. But that's when you're talking about going through trials. Grief is why it might be classified as a trial in somebody's definition. Grief is just its own thing.
Yeah.
And so you want to feel it, within your inner man. My children and I have these conversations. We certainly don't want to get stuck. Um, but we also don't want to try to go too quickly as well. So
Landy, that when you say you don't want to get stuck, but isn't that one of the things that I think people really fight is getting stuck there or just paralyzed by
absolutely.
the pain of grief?
Yes, yeah. There's a couple of things I'd like to touch on that real quickly, and that is in my own world. I want to talk about building a shrine, and then I want to talk about putting your head in the sand. So let me talk about putting your head in the sand first. My personality is that I just want to get things done, and so I'd like to check it off the box and move to the next thing. However, I've noticed during grief, I have a tendency, even with some important things, to put my head in the sand. Uh, I don't want to deal with that today. I don't want to talk about that today. And you say, well, Glenn, what are you talking about? Well, specifically, say hospital bills that come in the mail. Open the mail, you see a $55,000 hospital bill, and you realize, okay, insurance is saying they're not paying this one. I need to deal with this, but I just put it in the stack. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't deal with it. I
No,
know I need to make a phone call that day, really, but I just put my head in the sand. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And some of those I've been doing that for days, just to be honest. Burying
So
my head.
are you giving yourself grace?
Uh, I'm doing my best to give myself grace. I, I say, I say this. I want to give myself enough grace, but I also don't want that grace to conflict with my credit report. You know?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, yeah, some of the very real things that happen with the cancer diagnosis and grief is that. So you bury your head in the sand. Say my house. I feel like, well, this house is too large for me. Probably going to sell it. So I talk to the realtor, and then I just don't return her phone calls. I just because I don't feel like doing that right now. Yeah, and it's not her fault. I'm the one who scheduled the first meeting. So.
But
Those
I think it's really critical, Glenn, that you give yourself, the time you need and whew,
Yeah. Folks say don't make major decisions for a year. That's most. If you just talk to anybody who's, that's kind of the parameter. Most people say big decisions wait a year, and there are sometimes you have that luxury. Now, I know some people who say a spouse passes and you have a massive house note, okay, and you're now on one income or no income. Well, you can't afford to pay that house note, so you don't have the luxury, you
that's
know,
right.
of 1 year. So every situation has its own specifics. But also, the head in the sand's a big deal. And let me go to the building the shrine thing. Um, it's very easy to build a shrine, um, i.e., everything they touched, everything they wore, uh, every thing in the house. Um, it suddenly becomes sacred. It becomes sacred first to your children, because, hey, that's the angel mom, and don't touch it, don't move it. It becomes sacred to you as time goes on because you suddenly realize she's never touching that again. And maybe it still smells like her. Maybe you can see her fingerprints on the glasses. Maybe you can see a place where she kissed a sticky note when she left you a note, and her lip gloss, wink wink, is still there. Um, and so those things can become shrine like. Now, that's not all bad. It's not all bad. It's normal. When my mother passed, uh, mercy, uh, everything that she'd ever touched to me was holy almost. But here's the problem: if you build too many shrines, you can't progress past the shrine. You become a slave to the shrine. Uh,
Right.
you can't sell the house, you can't sell the car, you can't maybe donate some of her clothes to somebody who would get a lot of good use out of them. So you're stuck at the shrine, and I think this is easiest, especially for people who lose children. Um, Folks who lose parents, you can build a shrine, but at some point you see the sense, and I got to move past this. I would think that people who lose children would have the most difficult problem with building a shrine. But at some point, you have to let go of the shrine and move, unshackle yourself from that, and go forward, um, because you'll be stuck forever if you don't.
That's heavy,
Mhm. Mhm.
but that's critical.
Now, don't if you're struggling with grief, and listen, I'm yesterday was 2 months in for me. That was the 2 month anniversary. I was preaching a service in Alabama. People asked me, how did the service go? I said, I've preached better. I was well, quite frankly, I was grieving heavy that morning before church, and had to get myself together to minister in the service. And I know I've been much better. My mind was a little scattered. Uh, the Lord helped though, and overall service was good. But those moments are going to happen, uh, and all the first occur. But I don't want to imply that I'm trying to shove you past your shrine. I'm not saying that. I don't want to be cruel when I say you got to let go of your shrine. I just caution you to make sure that whatever you call sacred, you can pick up and carry it with you on the journey. Uh, that doesn't mean physically, but that you don't allow any one thing to hold you at one date, one location, 1 year. Don't let it hold you there, because it will if you let it.
I know that you and Madonna were a package.
Mhm.
You ministered across our fellowship, just everywhere. And that's got to be difficult going single into places.
Nan, I didn't know how difficult it would be. Um, we've been ministering together for right at 30 years. Um, when you're younger and establishing your ministry, everybody else has all the say so. You have none, not in a bad way, but in other words, hey, every service I'm at, she's got to be at, that kind of thing. I preach, she sings, that's the package. That you're young, so that's required. You don't have much say so. Uh, Fast forward to you're in your 50s doing this. You lived a little life. You've been through a little pain. Our story has been has had some years of some painful years, and so you've been through all of that. And when you get to a point where she says, "You know what, Glenn, I'm not going this weekend," and you suddenly realize that's okay. At 50, that's just fine. You get to make that choice. And so more times than not in the last, or many times in the last year and a half, she would say, you know what, I think I'm going to hang out here. Or I think I'm going to go on a trip with my friends. And you'll be good by yourself. So I'd had her some weekends, a fair number of them where she wasn't present. So I thought, I'm kind of used to maybe going some by myself. Oh my mercy. I had no idea. When she passed, Pastor asked me to take some time off. I took the time off he asked me to take, and Pastor Mangan. And then people thought you should start traveling again. It'd be good for your mind, give you some focus and some purpose. And I did that. the first time I stepped on a stage and realized I'm taking this mic and she will never sing before I preach again, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I just began to weep. Now, fortunately, the first service back was set up at a church I was very comfortable with. And so they were cool. If I couldn't get it together, they were going to be fine. We had a great relationship with them. So that was planned and good. But it just hit me in the gut. The first time I went back to a hotel after preaching, had a day with the pastor and his family, and they were so kind to me. I go back to the hotel alone for the first time. Uh, oh my gracious, excruciating. And then her feedback, her feedback's so crucial. You know how you do. Glenn, I didn't like that story. It went too long. Oh, I love that point. Maybe abbreviate the second point. Uh,
Oh, I could hear her right now.
yeah, yeah. Abbreviate was her favorite word. She wanted to be brief. And so anyway, you missed that. You missed her encouragement. And I hate to admit I'm so little boyish that I miss her saying, "That was good, baby." I didn't know I valued that so much, but now that she's gone, it's amazing. So now let me say another thing on that. I'm going to try to be vulnerable and steer me a little bit, Dan. If you want to get to some place I'm not going, I'm okay. Any questions?
Good. You're doing good. Good,
No,
good.
nothing's off limit. Ask me anything, but I want to be vulnerable and say this. Okay. Uh, I'm 52. Madonna and I had talked about what the rest of our life might look like. On some days we thought, we might pastor a church again. I work a job. I'm fortunate to have a good job here in Alexandria. And so I work Monday through Friday and travel on the weekend. So we talked about, okay, if this is the way God has it for us, doing it like this, it's great. We're content. We're happy. So what I had then was I had uh, okay, this is great if this is how it always is, or if another thing opens, we're fine with that too. So we had a skeleton
Yeah.
about what our life might look like. And so at the very least, now none of that's true anymore. Nothing looks like what I imagined it to be. Not one thing. I can pretend because I do in my mind almost. I don't know that I'm pretending, but when I go out and preach, it feels normal. It feels like life as always. But often, I had a 6-hour drive back home yesterday from church service, and so I was just driving and thinking, and I thought, Glenn, Madonna's not going to be there when you get home. Stop pretending, man. This is not like you thought it would be. So what comes with that, you lose your spouse. You also lose oodles of dreams. You bury a lot of dreams in that grave because most of your dreams involved your spouse. So almost every dream I had was buried with her. So you think to yourself, okay, when do I start dreaming new dreams? Secondly, that is married often to fear.
Yeah.
I've never been a fearful person. I've been through some traumatic things in my life, much of it my own doing, but traumatic nonetheless. I can't say that I dealt with a lot of fear. That's not my personality. But now there's a certain amount of fear. Like, what are you going to do, Glenn? And then I can be vulnerable here and say this, and if some of my friends are watching, don't text me. I'm okay. I'm okay. I know you love me. I know you love me and you value my ministry. But there's a part of you, one of those fears is, okay, Glenn, You and Madonna have always been a package. Now, how much of that ministry will continue? Okay. I don't say I lay around at night thinking about that, but those thoughts flash in your mind.
Sure.
Okay, you're only half now. Uh, and so many of our friendships, let's talk about that. Uh, most of our friendships at this point in our life, her and I had our individual friends, obviously, but so many of our friendships was the four of us, me and Madonna, another husband and wife. So some of those friendships die.
Yeah.
You say, "Oh, Glenn," and I know somebody's going to text me and say, "I still love you, Glenn." I know you do. It's just there's a difference. There's a
Yeah.
difference, and there's a distance that comes with that. So you lose a spouse, you lose a friend, uh, you lose a lot of dreams. You wrestle with some fear. You also lose some friendships. Not like people say, "I don't want to be your friend anymore," but the comfort level changes, and so those things you can wrestle with some, shall I call them, insecurities that you never had before. Uh,
Glenn, how about regrets, things you didn't do right?
mm,
Uh, I have a friend that his wife passed. She was very young, 38.
mm,
And he told Richard M. and I one of the things that he just he just couldn't get over was that she would ask him, "Can you get that side of the bed? Could you help me make the bed?"
mm,
And he told her, "No, that's your job." And for some reason, that was a huge thing.
mm,
After she passed, she died of cancer at very young, 38. And and that was one of the things I mean, are there so if you do have any regrets in the relationship with Madonna, how do you navigate?
Well, I think it's part and parcel with the territory. With the loss of a spouse at any age, especially when you think that they died too young. And I had someone say to me, "Glenn, what's too young?" And I said, "I don't think you put an age on that because some people die at 65 and you think too young. Some people die at 70 and you think, man, they had another 15 years if,
Hey,
Yeah.
Dad.
not for the cancer."
Something's happened to the
So
volume.
at the end of the day, I I wonder sometimes
I'm over there and blue.
about these regrets, and these regrets are normal, I think. You say, "Well, Glenn, do you have some regrets um, of your own?" And I say, "Yeah, I do. Um, I have regrets thinking, I should I took her to a doctor in another city when she had that weird pain in February. Should I found a specialist?" Those things are things I wrestle with. Um, Now, you say, how do you deal with them? First of all, you deal with them. For me, a lot of the regrets come from wishing that maybe I'd have taken to a different doctor or had some more tests run. Um, and so I have to say, okay, Glenn, why didn't you take her to another doctor? Uh, did you not acknowledge the pain? No, I acknowledge the pain. Uh, did you have any questions about the level of care she was getting at this doctor? No, I didn't have any questions about the level of care. Did you ask Madonna, would she like to go to another doctor? Yeah, she felt comfortable with the treatment she was getting. So, uh, with your regrets, you have to deal with them head on. asked yourself the questions. Once you ask yourself the questions and you covered, checked off the boxes, then you go to the next one until you've marked them off. Now, there will be regrets that you mark off the boxes, you ask the hard questions, and those regrets will keep coming back. When those regrets come multiple times, it's my thought that those then becomes attacks of your adversary and
Yes,
not just regrets.
I believe that.
So you use prayer and the normal pleading the blood and the word of God and getting in spiritual atmospheres. You do that the way you normally do any other spiritual attack.
Right.
Now I will say you will probably have a regret that you can't check the box on. Then you have to say, okay, what frame of mind was I in? Was it a joke? Yeah, it was a joke. If it wasn't a joke, was it a tense day? Yeah, we're under pressure. I just got news that they were going to lay off 300 from our workforce. Maybe I said something in a short moment that I regret saying. So you have to use the phrase you said before, give yourself some grace.
Yes.
And then you realize another thing I would like to recommend is once you check the boxes, once it's turned into a spiritual attack and you rebuke the enemy, once you check your state of mind or the circumstances of the day, if that doesn't work, then get you a piece of paper and a pen, because typing in a computer doesn't seem to connect to the brain the same way in this grief process. Start writing you a list of all your regrets. Just write them down, the ones that you can't resolve. Just write them down. And then you lay them on your nightstand or the bar of your house, your kitchen, and you give yourself 3 days to read those lists and add to it. And then at some point, find you a fire pit or a bonfire or a fireplace that's safe, and you burn that list. And you say, when this last scrap of paper burns, it's over. I realize those are things I just can't fix now, but they're gone. And that's how I would deal with it.
That is so good. That's so good, Glenn.
I think too, you also have to say to yourself, how many of these are regrets, and how many of these are triggers? You say, well, Glenn, regrets triggers regret. No, triggers usually involve an emotional response. Regrets are things that have naturally occurred in the course of life that you wish you could redo. And sometimes I feel people are telling me they're dealing with regrets, and what they're really dealing with are emotional triggers. And emotional triggers sometimes can spiral into these out of control rabbit holes of grief that you started out on a normal day. You get triggered and then you're at the bottom of the rabbit hole. And that's a separate discussion, but I don't want people to get that confused with grief. Just write the regrets. With regrets, write the regrets down, burn them, and say, I can't help it anymore. I wish I could, and attempt to move forward.
Is there anything else that you would like to say as a wrap up on this?
As a wrap up, give yourself the freedom to not be a super Christian. You say, what do you mean, Glenn? Well, during grief, the fog of grief affects your brain. If you didn't have ADD before, you might have ADD now for a space of time.
That's true.
You're not going to be able to read chapters of the Bible fully focused and get in third heaven when you're grieving. Give yourself some space not to be a super Christian. Your prayer life is going to be a struggle for a while, especially when you're dealing with the why, especially when you're dealing with the why now, uh, and especially when you're dealing with the timing of what happened. So here's what you do: you go in prayer and you say something like this: Lord, I'm not going to be praying my best prayers today, but I'm going to sit in your presence because I need to, and I need you. And if you can just take what I'm doing right now as a sign that I wish I could pray better and help me through, then I would really appreciate it. And you'll be shocked at the spiritual strength you receive just sitting in your chair or kneeling at your altar, wherever that is, not saying much, but just telling God I'm here because I need to be here. So you're going to struggle reading the word. You're going to struggle praying. You're going to struggle hearing songs about miracles early on. You're going to struggle hearing songs about God will never let you down because your mind's going to tell you he did.
Yes.
So give yourself all of that space and allow God to slowly push you forward. And be content with forward, however minute it is. Now, you don't have to go forward every day, but I would challenge you every 7-day span, try to look back and say, I've moved the needle forward just a bit. I want to say I'm sorry for your loss, sorry for the fear, sorry for the pain, sorry for the financial struggle it might bring some of you. I'm sorry for the loss of friends and the loss of dreams. I'm sorry that you'll never hear them speak to you again. Sorry about it. But know this, that there is no requirement about your pace. There's only one requirement: that you point your ship in the right direction and be content to sail forward however slowly you need to sail.
That's amazing. Glenn, thank you so much. This is honestly, this is like a hallmark for you to be on this, just losing your girl 2 months ago. I really felt so hesitant to ask you because this is huge emotionally for you to talk, but it's so the authenticity of your words strikes and impacts so deeply. And I just cannot thank you enough, Glenn. I do have one more thing to say, and I want to thank everyone that's on here. Next month, we will be meeting again on the first Monday night. And all of you that are on, I just appreciate you joining, but please tell your friends. Please tell people that need to hear these amazing speakers on this Zoom, this A6 Zoom. Happens once a month on the first Monday night of the month. Please tell them about Glenn Massey. Please tell them they can go to the A6 YouTube channel. And this talk, incredible words, will be archived for your friends, people that need to hear him. It'll be on there. Before we close, Glenn, I'm praying for all of this financial burden that you're under. It's huge, and we're praying for God to bring a miracle.
Thank you. He's a faithful God, and fortunately, Insurance pays what they will. Every now and then, cancer diagnoses come with some experimental treatments, and they're always reluctant to pay for that. But at the end of the day, I know God takes care of his own, and I
He
don't
does. Yes,
think
he does. Would you close this in prayer as we end this wonderful time with you, Glenn? Thank you so much.
thank you, Nan.
Love
Father,
you.
I thank you so much for the platform that Nan has provided to address this most sensitive subject called grief. I pray for those who have watched and will watch the archived version. I pray the peace of God walks with them and the strength to face each moment of the day is given. Your word says, as our days are, so shall our strength be. And so I ask for strength for each day. Be a comforter, be a light in the darkness, be a warm blanket when they're afraid, but mostly be hope. God, be hope. Offer hope that tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, somehow, not only will we have better days, but that we'll look back and say, oh, I can see that God is helping. I ask all of this in the precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. God bless all of you. We love you.
Thank you, Dan. God bless.